Well, good morning, everybody. The thought this morning is taken from a sermon given by Pastor Colin Smith of the Orchard Evangelical Free Church in Illinois. And it's on the subject of idols. And I want to commence with a couple of readings. The first one is taken from Exodus chapter 20 and verse 3. And of course, it's God speaking. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them nor serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me. And the second reading is taken from Psalm 135 and beginning at verse 15. The idols of the nations are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. They have mouths, but they do not speak. Eyes they have, but they do not see. They have ears, but they do not hear. Nor is there any breath in their mouths. Those who make them are like them. So is everyone who trusts in them. So we can see then that an idol is anyone or anything which takes the place of God. And to God, it's a very serious issue. He has some very, very strong words to say about it. Of course, there's much more in the Bible God says about idols than I've said there. That's just a couple of small quotations. And it's a very, very serious subject for a number of reasons. Fundamentally, first and foremost, we as Christians recognize that we are made to love and worship God. That is the first primary function for a human being, if you like. It is the meaning of life. There is a famous quotation from Augustine in which Augustine said, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you." And that is, as I've said, an absolute primary, in fact, it is the primary fundamental truth in anybody's life, that we are made by God and for God. Now, of course, in modern Western society, sadly now we live in a culture that is post-Christian and in which the idea of God has been, by and large, rejected. One of the huge problems with that is it gives people the problem of trying to meet that need, trying to fill that gap, trying to find that rest for their hearts. Because whether they believe it or not, whether they admit it or not, doesn't change the truth that they are made by God and for God. And they will never find rest unless they find it in God. And in our modern Western society, which is sadly primarily atheistic, it seems to me that the majority of people set up not necessarily an idol of wood or stone, or silver or gold, but they set up a person in the place of God. They set up another human being, or a human being. For example, number one idol, it seems to me, that a person will set up in their own lives is themselves. They will be their own God. They will make their own decisions. They will decide what's right and wrong. They will order their lives. They will answer to nobody, or as little as possible. And they will take the consequences of their decisions, although they probably don't like them when they come. And it's a clear rejection of God. Don't care what God wants, don't care what God's values are, don't care what God wants to do with my life. It's my life, I'll live it, I'll make my own decision. Another idol which people will typically set up, and I've just labelled this very broadly, is a lover. Now that could be a husband or a wife, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, but somebody whom Hollywood says, they'll fill that void in your life. Life is just a journey trying to find this one special person, and when you find them, all your problems will disappear, all that need will be met, that aching void will be filled, and everything will be wonderful. And this is the Hollywood portrayal of love, and this is something that I mentioned in my last talk. Just as a final example, another idol which somebody may set up may well be a child. Could be a newborn child, or could be a young child. But of course, we have this perception that children are apparently innocent. They are compared to us. That's not necessarily saying a lot. And you know what it's like, when, especially with a newborn child, there's something wonderful about them. They have their whole lives ahead of them. They are innocent compared to us. They are helpless. You feel needed. Some people just put all of their time and energy into their children. And when it's excessive like that, when it's to that kind of degree, it pretty much becomes, to some people, an idol. It becomes idolatry. Now, not only is this deeply offensive to God, and this is the point that Colin Smith was making in his sermon, it places the person who's been set up as the idol into a position for which they are utterly unsuitable and unable to fulfill. No matter what person you set up as your idol, if it's another human being, I guarantee you they cannot solve your problems because they've got too many of their own. They cannot cleanse your conscience because their own is defiled. They cannot really understand you and your issues because they don't really understand themselves, because their understanding, like yours, is limited and corrupted. And even if they are able to help you in some way, this doesn't necessarily mean that they will. It's Spurgeon who said the problem with people is, when it comes to asking them for help, they're often unwilling when able and unable when willing. In short, they can't be your God because they need God, the real God, as much as you do. They are utterly unable, unsuitable to fulfill that role. It is deeply unfair. The expectations placed upon them are completely unrealistic, and they, like you, if you've been set up in that place, will fail utterly. And that's one of the many reasons why society is the way it is, and people are as unhappy as they are. We have the privilege of worshipping the true God, the one to whom we can bring all our problems, all our fears, all our anxieties, and who is not only infinitely willing, but infinitely able to help. That God, in all his greatness and all his knowledge and all his majesty and all the many, many, many attributes which I just don't have time to list, is so willing and so able to help us in our requests. Just a thought on idols. Let us continue our worship this morning, worshipping the true God and being grateful that we have the privilege of doing so, because the overwhelming majority do not.